Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. This is the 6th episode of the methods that I use to learn the Arabic language. At the end of the last episode, I spoke briefly that I said, about the next episode, and inshallah that I'll be talking about something that you can use as kind of a bridge to get you ready for the bigger books in Nahu. Because when you finish Al-Ajroomiyyah, it's tough, and you go through a lot to get what you need to get through it. But then if you were to open up something like Qatar al-Nada, Shudur al-Dhahab, Mughni Labib, Ibn Aqil, or any of those types of books, and these are not the actual bigger books. These are the bigger books that you'll mainly study, but these are not the actual bigger books, because the bigger books like Kafiyat Ibn Hajib, the Sharh of the Kafiyah Ibn Hajib, and also the Sharh of Al-Hamal al-Hawami' al-Suyuti. These are like the bigger books. Ashbah wa Nadha'ir also al-Suyuti. So, but these are the bigger books that you'll be studying. And Qatar al-Nada obviously it's not a bigger book, but the issues that he goes through, the Ibn Hisham goes through in these books, you're going to find when you get through with Al-Ajroomiyyah, you're going to find a lot of difficulties. And it's similar to studying fiqh. Because generally, if you study a small matan in fiqh, let's say that you were going to study the book Ad-Darari al-Madiyya, the Shawkani, Allah yarhamu. Shawkani, what he tried to do in the matan Ad-Durr al-Bahiyya, is that he tried to focus only on the issues that there were no ikhtilaf in. Because he was trying to make the book easy for the people. So he wanted to keep every single masala that there's a hadith, it's very clear with the meaning, and that this is the issue following the hadith, and there's if there either no ikhtilaf or very, very little, because he didn't want to confuse the person as they started to study. And then of course as you go and you progress, when you start you study Bulugh al-Maram, and you go into Subul al-Salam, and then you go to Al-Muntaqa and Nail al-Awtar, then you're going to start to see more and more difference of opinions. But at that point you'll be able to handle it. So the same thing with Nahu, with Ajroomiyyah. Ibn Ajroom, he tried to keep everything very, very simple for you. He tried to stay away from all the different issues about the Basriyun say this and the Kufiyun say this, and he tried to keep it very, 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 very simple. So he even stayed on one madhab throughout the whole book, which of course because he follows the Kufi madhab, so he stayed on that madhab without going into any of the different ikhtilafat. So that's the whole point of keeping it simple. But now the point is that as now that you got the basics and you have that, now you have to start to learn these different issues that are going to bring you a little bit of a headache. So you see, even if you understood Al-Ajroomiyyah just 100%, if you were to open up Qatar al-Nada and just read through it, you're going to find a lot of difficulty with these issues, because there's a lot of things that are being introduced to you for the first time. So what we need a book that is going to prepare us for that, for Shudur al-Dhahab, for Mughni Labib, for Ibn Aqil, and for those types of books that we're going to need to really, 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 really get so we can get the Nahu down, and we can go through all the different issues that we need, so that we can use in our speech and in our writing and our understanding of the Arabic language. Okay, so now you have two choices, right? A lot of the ulama of Lugha, they generally advise the people to go to Mulhat al-I'rab after Al-Ajroomiyyah, after Tuhfat al-Saniyah. Mulhat al-I'rab is a poem, 375 lines, and it goes into different issues that Ajroomiyyah did not cover. Sheikh Mubil, Allah yarhamu, he used to advise the people to memorize Mulhat al-I'rab instead of Al-Ajroomiyyah. And if you have the ability to memorize that, then it's much better, because you can study Al-Ajroomiyyah and you can memorize all the different ta'rifat and everything that comes in the explanation of Al-Ajroomiyyah. But to have a matan, a small book to memorize Mulhat al-I'rab, is much better. Me, unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, it's Qadarullah ma sha fa'al, is that I didn't know about Mulhat al-I'rab until after I already memorized Al-Ajroomiyyah. So by that time I was like, well, there's no point in memorizing Mulhat. So I just memorized different chapters from it, whatever I needed, and that was that, and then just focus on the further books. So you have that, okay, and you have different explanations. The explanation that the people used a lot in Yemen was Tuhfat al-Ahbab by Al-Bahrak, which is a good explanation. You have an explanation also by Al-Fakihi. And Fakihi is another person, that's a person you need to, now that you're finished with Al-Ajroomiyyah, Al-Fakihi is a person that you need to become very, 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 very familiar with. His name his complete name is Jamaluddin, Jamaluddin Jamaluddin Abdullah ibn Ahmed al-Fakihi. That's his original, that's his whole name, but everybody, you see it, Al-Fakihi. He wrote an explanation of Al-Ajroomiyyah. He wrote an explanation of Al-Mutammimah, of Mlhat al-I'rab, of Qatr al-Nada, and he might, I'm not sure if he wrote an explanation of Alfiyyah. If he did, I'm not aware of it. I didn't see it, but I saw the other explanations. I had all those previous explanations that I mentioned. So his explanation of Mutammimah is a little bit difficult to find. I did find it. You're not going to find the best print generally, but if you get it, you can get it. Ahmed bin Thabit, he wrote his explanation of Mutammimah using Al-Fakihi's explanation. So if you can't find Fakihi's explanation, you can always get Ahmed ibn Thabit's, Sheikh Ahmed, because he used that a lot in his explanation of Mutammimah. And Mutammimah is the next book that I'm going to talk about now. So the next book, Mutammimah Al-Ajroomiyyah. Now, this is originally, it's written by, first off, it's written by Al-Hattab, and he wrote the book as an explanation of Al-Ajroomiyyah. That was the main point. What he wanted to do is, he wanted to explain Al-Ajroomiyyah, and then he wanted to leave out all the different things that were left out of Al-Ajroomiyyah to make it more complete. I don't think, Allahu A'lam, if he meant it to be like a book to be memorized, more or less to be read and studied. This is I have like one copy of it. This is probably the best print that I've seen in the bookstores. This one I read it, because I read every single one. Like every single print that I've gotten, like a Dar al-Asriyah, Dar al-Athar, every one I get it and I read it maybe 2 or 3 times just to see if it's good or not. This one I probably read about 20 or 30 times. Alhamdulillah, I only found like maybe 1 or 2 mistakes through the print. So that's probably the best one on the market. Sardiya, I found this one all the time. I always see it at Dar ibn Jawzi. As far as being in America, I don't know. I'm not sure. You can find it online. This is the second edition. I think they have the first edition. If you type in Mutammimah Al-Ajroomiyyah PDF, you could probably find. I found the first edition online. The first edition, but not the second, not this one. So I don't know about the first edition. I think I read it once. I used to put it on my phone just in case because this one, like when I found this in the bookshop, first off, I found it and I read it. Once I read it like maybe 2 or 3 times all the way through, I said, all right, this is good, And I went back and bought like maybe 6, 7, 8 copies. So I keep one in my bag, one everywhere I go, just so but just in case that I don't have it with me, I used to keep the first edition on my phone, so that way I can always look at that if this wasn't available at the time. So Mutammimah Al-Ajroomiyyah is probably the best book after Al-Ajroomiyyah. It's not necessary that you study Mlhat al-I'rab. Like I said, that is the you can if you want to, just to get more practice. And also because Mlhat al-I'rab is in poetry form, so it's good to study it. If you have a teacher that is going to study it, and if you can sit down with the sharh of al-Bahraq, which is Tuhfat al-Ahbab, and you can go through that, it's very beneficial. And it helps to get the information because the more you repeat the information, the more it sticks. So you don't want to move through it too quickly, but you don't want to go too slow, because if you go too slow, then you get bored and you want to go to something else. So if you have the opportunity to study it, then study it. It's beneficial, because like it will help you when you get to Alfiyyah, because Alfiyyah obviously is poetry. It's a poem. And a lot of us Westerners, that's the issue that we have the issue of understanding the poetry, because it's written the way that it's written. There's a lot of taqdeem wa ta'khir, and so it confuses us. So it's better, like in the early stages, if you can study Mlhat al-I'rab, and to get that because it's a poem, so you can start to understand the poem and understand. So it does help you out when you get to Alfiyyah. So if you can do that, do it. If you've already memorized Al-Ajroomiyyah, I wouldn't tell you to use your energy to memorize Mlhat al-I'rab. Maybe just like I told you, what I did is just memorize different abwab of things that were not in Al-Ajroomiyyah, just to like put it, just to have that extra benefit. I would, like for me, I would save my energy for either Mutammimah, or I would save my energy for Alfiyyah Ibn Maalik, if that's what if you're really planning to study that far. Now Mutammimah is very, very good, because like I said, he took the matan of Al-Ajroomiyyah is in Mutammimah, it's in there. So if you memorize Al-Ajroomiyyah, you'll see the matan is in there, but he added a lot of things to it. He put in, for example, in the Bab al-I'rab, he put in evidence, and mashallah al-Khattab, throughout the whole matan, he always brought the Quran as evidence. Whenever there was any verse that could be used as evidence for that rule in the Arabic language, he would use the Quran first. If there was an ayat that he had. If he didn't have the ayat, then he would use the poetry. But this is the good thing. When he used the shawahid of poetry, the shawahid al-shi'riyah, he would bring the verses of poetry from Qatar and from the Ibn Aqil. And he would bring that and he would put that into the matan. So this way you're already getting that evidence in your head as you're studying this. If you were to memorize Mutammimah. Now, I only know one person that ever advised the people to memorize Mutammimah, and that was Sheikh al-Mahdari. I memorized a lot of it, a good portion of it, and I read it a lot, and I definitely am trying to finish memorizing it. So for me, I would advise the people, if you have that type of ability, memorize it. If not, save your energy for Alfiyyah. It depends on, for me, I was studying Ibn Aqil, and I hadn't, for example, like this book, Mutammimah, I had it, but I never understood the value of it. And the people that I was studying with in Ibn Aqil, they were teaching Mutammimah. So they kept saying the book. And I know from Damaj that all the students, like Mutammimah was a book that everybody studied, generally. That was as you started to progress through Nahu. So I know the book, but I never was familiar with it because I skipped that. And I was in the lesson of Ibn Aqil. Because what I did is I just sat down and just read all the explanations. I started reading like the explanations, like I told you, of Al-Ajroomiyyah, and then went through like, Qatar and dance, things like that. So that's why I was sitting in Ibn Aqil. But when I kept hearing that they kept, because the Sheikh kept telling them, like, what's this? What's the answer to this? And they're like, how can you not answer? You're teaching Mutammimah. That's in Mutammimah. So I kept hearing that a lot. So what happened was while I was in the, one day when I finished the lesson, I said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to read this whole matan. Now, of course, this is not small, as you see. It's about, it's 120 pages. So the way that I broke it down is like, it takes about 100 minutes to read. A little less than 100 minutes to read this all the way through. And I sat down and read the book all the way through, and I was like, wow. That's it. I'm not, because at that time, because I was studying Alfiyyah. I was studying Ibn Aqil, so I was memorizing Alfiyyah. So, but then once I read this, I was like, no, because that was much more easier for me to understand. I had a big issue with, because the issue with Alfiyyah is that you have to understand the abiyat, but you still have to go back and memorize the rules. So Alfiyyah is for somebody that's already memorized all the rules that he's going to be studying, and then the Alfiyyah, it helps you to remember the rules. But if you don't have the rules and you're memorizing Alfiyyah, then you memorize Alfiyyah, then you have to go memorize all the rules. So I found all of the stuff that I needed to memorize was in Mutammimah. So I said, forget that. I left off Alfiyyah and started focusing only on Mutammimah while I was studying Alfiyyah. And that helped me greatly. I cannot even tell you like how much I started to understand because of that. So Mutammimah is a very, very underrated book. Very, very underrated book. People do not give it its props that it deserves. If you go through Mutammimah and you remember, like, let's just say, like, if you had the energy to sit down and memorize it, it's a little bit like it's a little bit longer as far as like Alfiyyah. It actually takes less time to read it. Mutammimah is a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Like I think maybe like about 10-minute difference. So Alfiyyah is a little bit shorter. But the point is like here, you don't have to memorize anything else. That's it. With Alfiyyah, you have to memorize Alfiyyah, but you still have to memorize other things. And here, because he put a lot of the shawahid, the shi'riyah, and all this, so you're getting all of that at one time, and it's like one-stop shopping, So for me, that's my advice, and a lot of people probably differ with me on this, and that's your business. Each person does, you do what's easy for you, what helps you. But I would tell you, before you disagree with my advice, sit down and read Mutammimah all the way through. Read it not once, because you cannot, I'm telling you this, one thing that you need to understand as a student of knowledge, books like this, you cannot read it just once. All right, you read it just once just to get familiar with the different chapters and what's going on in the book, but you have to read it at least 5, 6, 7 times to really get an idea of what he's really doing in the book. Because these are not like little baby books. where you can just like, this is not like a novel where you can just read it through once. And even with a novel, if you think about it, like, you know, English literature, you just can't read a book once and think that you've captured everything that there is to capture in the book. So with this is knowledge. This is not a novel. So this, you have to really, really give it its attention. And you have to read it over and over and over. I didn't really understand the benefit of Mutammimah until after I read it probably like 15, 20 times. That's when I started to like, okay, yeah, this is the book. This is it for me. Like, this is it. You know, this is where I want, you know, if I'm going to memorize something, I'm giving my energy to this and nothing else. So you have to do that. You have to like read it over and over. Don't just read it once, because you're not going to understand it like just that one time. You'll get it. You'll get an idea, but read it like 4 or 5 times and then make your judgment. Okay. Don't make your judgment just because you read it once or half of it or something like that. All right. So that's definitely a good book. And if you have a person who understands it very well and he studied it, then he can open up all the doors for you, you know, because once you study Mutammimah, you can go and sit in any class after that, in any class in Nahu, any class, inshallah. You can go to Mughni Labib, you can go to Ibn Aqil, you can go to Qatar al-Nada, you can go to Shudur al-Dhahab. Any class is open to you after that. I mean, if you don't want to do that, then what you can do is you can take the metan of Qatar al-Nada, which is small, and you can memorize that. I've read that probably the same amount of times, like, I don't know, 10, 20 times. It's not the same. This is a lot more complete. Now, the explanation of Qatar al-Nada, that's a whole different story. And a lot of the times, if you go online and you say, when they're trying to compare between Mutammimah and Qatar, they're comparing between the sharh, the explanation of Qatar, they're not comparing between the metan. All right, the metan of Qatar al-Nada is better. All right, if you're going from Al-Ajroomiyyah and you go to the metan of Qatar al-Nada, that will definitely help you out, you know, and it's not that big. So a very small metan. You can read it maybe 30 to 45 minutes. I can't remember because it was a long time ago. Like the last time that I read that, the metan itself was maybe 2013. So yeah, so like you're talking about 8 years ago. So I can't remember, but it's probably like between 30 to 45 minutes. Where this is going to take about 100 minutes. But like I said, once you memorize this, once you have this memorized, you have all the shawahid that you need in all the different masail. Because a lot of these things you're not going to, you know, you got to understand, like poetry is going to have to be a part of your life when you're studying Arabic. And not just studying Arabic, even when you read books of the ulama, you see that like, even Ibn Qayyim, he brings a lot of abiyat al-shi'riyah. So you need to start to like learn how to understand this. Because especially when you're studying Nahu, there's 3 things that they're going to use as evidence. They're going to use the Quran, the Sunnah, and poetry. And the poetry has to come before 200 Hijri. Before 200 Hijri, it's not considered evidence. So you see, like for example, a lot of the books of Nahu, they'll use different verses of poetry from Al-Mutanabbi. They love to use Mutanabbi a lot, even though Mutanabbi, he came later, after 200 Hijri. So his poetry is not actually evidence in the Arabic language. But because he applied all the rules in his poetry, so they use that to show the rule being applied, not as evidence. So keep that in mind. Whatever you have that's before 200, from 199 Hijri down, you know, that's evidence. You can say that this is the way that the Arab spoke. Anything after that is not evidence. So Mutanabbi is not evidence in the Arabic language. But because of his strong knowledge of Arabic and because he applied the rules, that's why you go through Qatar al-Nada, you go through Ibn Aqil, you go through Mughni Labib, and you'll see, you know, call him Mutanabbi. And they'll use his poetry a lot because of that. Generally, what you need to, well, inshallah, later on, I'll make maybe not the next video, but probably like the video after the next one, I'll talk about like going through poetry and everything. But right now, I only want to deal with this because this is something that you're going to have to deal with, period. Because a lot of the issues in Nahu, maybe they're not going to be an ayat of the Quran, you know, and there might not be a statement from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have to understand the poetry. Just to give like one small example, because when you're studying like Rubba, you know, because you know there's a line of poetry from Imr al-Qais where you only find this rule in this poetry. And of course, because Imr al-Qais is from Jahiliyyah, he's from before the Prophet ﷺ. So his poetry, of course, is accepted as evidence in the Arabic language. Okay, and he said, you know, in his poem, he said, وَلَيْلٍ كَمَوْجِ الْبَحْرِ أَرْخَى صُدُولُهُ. So here he said, وَلَيْلٍ. So focus on that. Wow. وَلَيْلٍ كَمَوْجِ الْبَحْرِ أَرْخَى صُدُولُهُ بِأَنْوَاعِ الْحُمُومِ لِيَبْتَلِي. So he said وَلَيْلٍ. So here the issue is, why is it majroor? And then this is the issue that you'll see when you go into like Mutammimah, and they do introduce it in at the end of Al-Ajroomiyyah, but they go into it deeper in like Mutammimah and Qatr, that this is the waw rubba, that is rubba mahdhuf. So I mean, things like this you're gonna find them in poetry. So because walaylan, because the waw here, it should be like what? Obviously because it's starting off, it should be waw al-ibtida'. So that means that it shouldn't be majroor, it should be marfu', it should be walaylun. If the sentence was going to continue on as a mubtada wa khabar, but it didn't happen. It's a walaylan kamawj al-bahri arkha sadulahu. So here, then when the Arabs went and read this, they tried to understand, okay, because the actual sentence is وَرُبَّ لَيْلٍ كَمَوْجِ الْبَحْرِ أَرْخَى صَدُولَهُ. So they said it's رُبَّ mahdhuf. And some people, like in Al-Ajroomiyyah, he said waw rubba. And this is what you'll see in the end of Al-Ajroomiyyah. So like things like this, you can't, you know, there's too many things that I had to mention here. I just mentioned that because it's a popular issue that's going to come up in all the books, and they're going to use that exact same line of poetry in all the books of Nahu. So the point is that, you know, these are things that you're going to have to deal with. And you need that book that's going to help you to start to be able to deal with those things. And for me, like I said, Mutammimah Al-Ajroomiyyah is the best. Now, from the explanations of Mutammimah, you have Al-Kawakib. And Al-Kawakib, yeah, man, Allah ya'inuk. That's not a book that you're going to be reading anytime soon. So, that was because, that was a very, very difficult sharh. A very, very difficult sharh. I believe one brother told me from Damaj, I didn't hear this, you know, the brother told me from that the Sheikh Mubil said that there are things in the Kawakib, he said that I don't know. So Allahu A'lam, you know, that's the brother told me that, so I believe it. If you read through Al-Kawakib, you see issues in Nahu because he really, really, really expanded the metan. So like, I wouldn't go with that one. Like I mentioned previously, Sheikh Ahmed ibn Thabit, he has a book, it's called Al-Durratu Al-Bahiyya. I think it's Al-Durratu Al-Bahiyya ala Mutammimah Al-Ajroomiyyah. So I don't know if you can find that in the marketplace, but that's probably the easiest and best, most concise explanation of Mutammimah without taking out anything from it, like giving it its rights and keeping it. And mashallah, he took all the different shawahid and he did the i'rab at the bottom, so he did a lot of service to the book, to the metan. Sheikh al-Mahdari, he did a tahqiq of al-Kawakib, which I had. I don't know where I got to go to. I left that book in Riyadh, so inshallah, hopefully I can get that book back, ya Rabbi. So it's in 2 volumes. But like I said, Kawakib, that's going to be a more difficult book. The easiest one was always Al-Fakihi. Because I told you, like, this book is not a book that, like, you see a lot of, like, Alfiyyah, you'll see so many different explanations for it. You can't even, like, even Suyuti wrote it. Suyuti, he wrote his own Alfiyyah in Nahu. Alright? And he explained his own Alfiyyah, and he also explained Alfiyyah Ibn Maalik. So, I mean, you know, with Alfiyyah, you got Ibn Hisham, because obviously Ibn Hisham is another person that you're going to have to become very familiar with, because Ibn Hisham, he's the one who wrote, he wrote the Matan Qatr al-Nada, he wrote the Sharh, the explanation of Qatr al-Nada, he wrote the Matan of Shudur al-Dhahab, and he wrote the explanation of Shudur al-Dhahab, and he also wrote the Awdah al-Masalik, which is the Sharh of Alfiyyah Ibn Maalik. He's the one who wrote Mughni Labib. So Ibn Hisham is another individual that you're going to have to just go ahead and start filling your library up with his books. So Al-Fakihi is good because he writes, his explanations are generally easy. And Al-Fakihi did write an explanation of Qatr al-Nada. The matan is about 400 to 500 pages. I didn't read that, so I can't really comment. I had it, and wallahi, I wish I read it, but I didn't. I just read Ibn Hisham's. I read that twice. So, but Fakihi's, I didn't read it. But I read his other explanations, and mashallah, he's very, very simple. But not too simple. Not simple to the point where it's boring, but simple to the point where you understand it and it motivates you to give me more, give me more, give me more. Because that's what you want. You want that type of simplicity where you want more, and he starts to, and he brings you up, to daraj, get the daraj mark. So he progresses with you little by little. So you keep wanting more and keep wanting more. And then next thing you know, here you are at Alfiyyah, and you're like, wow, how did I get here? But you understand it. So that's the most important thing. any book that will do that. You don't want a book that somebody's going to smack you in the back of the head and say, okay, now you don't understand that. So like Qatar an-Nada will do that to you if you go straight from Al-Ajroomiyyah to that. So Mutammimah, inshallah, that's probably the best. If you can get that, and you have the ability to sit down and memorize it, it's going to be tedious. I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy. You're going to really have to. But if you memorize Mutammimah, your life will become so much simple as far as Nahwu is concerned. All right, inshallah. After that, I mean, obviously, after you finish Mutammimah, you go straight to Qatar an-Nada or Shadur al-Dhahab, whichever one you want to do, and then just progress from there, because Qatar an-Nada is so much easier after Mutammimah. So much easier. If you were like, and if you want to try it. Take after you study Tuhfat al-Saniyah, and just pick up Qatar an-Nada and read it. Read it all the way through. Don't worry about what you understand, what you don't understand. Just read it all the way through. Then go study Mutammimah. Sit down with the method of Mutammimah. If you're not going to memorize it, at least read it over and over and over and over and over again. What I used to do is I used to break it up into 20-minute parts. So it came up to 5 parts, and I would read it every 5 days. And I did that for months. All right, once you do that, the method gets stuck in your head regardless of if you memorized it or you didn't. Now, if you do that the whole time that you're you're studying Mutammimah, just read it over and over and over, because generally a class in Mutammimah, if you're studying with a sheikh that's really trying to get you to understand the method, it's probably going to take about 3 to 4 months. And I'm talking about studying every day. I'm talking about the way that we studied in Damaj, or even the way that the people used to teach even in Sanar, because the masjid that was next to my house, they taught Mutammimah all the time in the masjid, and it's about 3 to 4 months. But like I said, you're studying every day. You're studying every day. You have a class every day except for Friday. So if that's the case, 3 to 4 months. And if you figure you're reading it every 5 days, so let's just say 4 months. All right, 4 months, that's 120 days. You're reading it every 5 days. That's 6 times a month. You do the math, right? So 6 times a month times 4 months, that's 24 times that you finish the whole method. So now when you actually go into Qatar an-Nada, it's not like, okay, you can sit there and read the method backwards and forwards, but you have a good understanding of it. Now read the sharh of Qatar an-Nada again and see how much you understand. See how much easier it is. And then now you go and you study Qatar. And then after that, then you can go to Ibn Aqil, you go to Mughni Labib, and then after that, you just go on. If you want to go deeper, like reading different books of Nahwu. But I mean, at that point of studying Qatar an-Nada, you really have what you need as far as being a Talib al-Ilm, because we don't want to use our whole lives just studying Nahwu. That's not what we're here to do. What we're trying to use Nahwu, all the sciences of the Arabic language to understand the Hadith. And because that's our ultimate goal, to understand the Quran and understand the Sunnah. So the majority of your time, I mean, after you've memorized the Quran and you sit down and you're reading tafsir and things like that, the majority of your time as a Talib al-Ilm is going to be spent in the books of Hadith. That's it. You have to have that time put away every single day to review the Quran, and you got to constantly keep reading through different tafsir to keep those the information in your head about like what the different meanings of the words in the Quran and the different meanings of the ayat. You have to keep that. So you have to set time away every single day for those types of things. So you have to keep reading Tafsir Ibn Kathir, keep reading Tafsir Qurtubi, all the different tafsir. But the majority of your time is going to be spent in books of hadith. That's just the reality, because the books of hadith are just so vast, and most of the ahkam are going to be coming out of the hadith. So you don't want to spend so much time on Nahwu, on Sarf, on Balagha, on Ash'ar, and all that. You get what you need and you move on. Same thing with Usul al-Fiqh. You study Usul al-Fiqh, you get what you need to understand what, the different ahkam that you can understand from the hadith, and when something like, when something's like, mutlaq, when is muqayyad, when is, so when is mujmal, when is mubayyan, and all this type of stuff, all the, when is, what's the 5 ahkam, haram, mubah, mustahab, and once you get the things that you need, move on. You don't need to go deep into the big books of Usul al-Fiqh, where they're going to like ilm al-kalam and philosophy, and they're adding all this stuff into it. You're just going to end up wasting your time, because you're going to spend so much energy trying to understand that stuff that you're missing out on what you should be understanding, which is the hadith, which is getting back into the books of the hadith, because that's where the majority of the ahkam that you need, that's where it's going to come from. You understand? So don't waste your time on these things. You know, get what you need and move on. And inshallah, in the next episode, I will try to speak about a sarf, inshallah. Basic books that you can use in sarf, and how to progress in that science also, inshallah. Wa ila huna subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.